Okay, Zok the Heilige Gemara weiter. So the Heilige Mishnah says, Almanash Yeshli base core. Offer. Now, a base core, Rashi says, is a place that's big enough where you can plant 30 saw. Every 2 saw is 100 by 50. So if we're talking about 30 saw, then it's 100 by 50 times 15. So really what it is it's 1,500 times 50. So 1,500 times 50, I think I left my phone at home.
5 times 5.
1,500 times 50, Rashi tells us, is 1,500 by 50. So it's 1,500 times 50. Now, if you take the square root of 1,500 times 50, the square root will be 273 and a bit by 273 and a bit. So that is, oh, they got milk? So 273 and a bit by 273 and a bit. Amos, thank you so much. That is the amount of karka required for a base core off. So if he says he has that, Harezim Mekudeshes, then she's Mekudeshes. V'yeshle, of course, he has to have that property. Almanash Yeshli b'makom ploini. What if he says, I have in Toronto a base core offer? Well, then he has to have it in Toronto. And we're going to soon see what's the Kiddush. Why would you think he could have it elsewhere? What if he says, Almanash she'erach base core offer? Almanash that I'll show you a base core offer. Harezim Mukudeshes. Again, she's Mukudeshes. Huh?
What's he giving her?
Virena. No, he's not. He's just showing him a wealthy guy. Because he could show her? No, Zok the Gemara, Heir b'bika in the Mukudeshes. He has to show her his. If he just shows her in the bika, it's Mukudeshes. No. Oh, yeah, of course he's giving her shower puta. Here we're discussing it now. So someone told me a story. I'm not going to say the name, but we all know this guy. So his father once told me that when I got married, he said, I thought I married a very wealthy girl. Why? Because I flew him from Toronto to Brooklyn or by train from Toronto to Brooklyn to meet my wife. This is back in the 50s or 40s, I don't know, 50s. And my future shver picked me up from the train station in Manhattan, and he's driving me to Brooklyn to meet this girl on a date who ended up marrying. So he tells me, first of all, the fact that he had a car in those days was in and of itself pretty impressive. And as we're driving, he's pointing out different buildings. And he says in Yiddish, something like, wow, my shver owns half of Manhattan. After he got married, he realized his shver doesn't have any money at all. So he asked her, what do you mean there's a lost bone? He said, when they put up a sign for zoning, there's a zoning meeting, and whoever wants to come state an opinion. I never went and protested. It's a lost bone. So I'm a lostus nor bowen. That's not good enough. Then it has to be that you actually own the building. Okay, any guesses who it was? Practical Gemara. V'nechosh shema yeshloi. The same kasha the Gemara asked with the money. Maybe he has them. Maybe he has it. Just because you don't know about it. So how could you say Eina Mekudeshes? We actually learned a dissenting brisa that says that you are choshed just because you don't know for a fact that he has the property. We're choshed that he does. Sofet Mekudeshes. Zot Gemara Eina Chanami La Kosha. Our mission is discussing if it's a Kedusha Vade, or if he has to marry her again. The bride is discussing Avada she Sofet Mekudeshes, and she needs a get. Why did we need the Mishnah to repeat itself? The same halacha as in the last Mishnah that was talking about money, here it's talking about karka. Why would there be a difference? If we only knew by Susi that just because you don't see it, you still have to be choshet, Bishum Davidi Inchi the Mitzni. Sometimes a person has money and you don't know about it. So therefore, the Mishnah has to tell you, if he has the money, it's Mekudeshes. It's not Mekudeshes. You might say, maybe Mekudeshes anyway, because he probably has it, just because we don't see that he has it. Maybe he does has it. Aval Ara, That's impossible that he would have land and we wouldn't know about it. If he has land, it would have a coil. So therefore, if we don't know for sure that he has, maybe afilu kiddushay safek lek. Maybe it shouldn't even be mekudesh misafek. Demand the isle ira kala isle. If you own a property, people are going to know about it. If you have cash or stocks or other types of assets, people might never know about it. So therefore, you always have to be cautious. Yeah, maybe he has that money, even though we don't see it. But you might think by land, you don't have to have that concern. The two Mishnayos are side by side. Remember to tell us the Ara Kazuzah. Land is just like Zuzah. If he has for sure, it's a Vada Kiddushin. If he doesn't have it, it's still a Safek Kiddushin. Karka, Yesh Loi, it's a Vada Mukadeshes, Ein Loi, it's still a Safek. Okay, about it. Zog to more weiter. Almanash Yesli B'makam Ploini, so Im Yesh Loi Mukadeshes, if not, no. For Mapshita, the Tanai was, he had to have it to Toronto, not in Gaza. Someone called me up yesterday and told me he found me a great deal on the property, but it's in Gaza. He wants to know if I want to go in with him. So Pshita, the Mao de Tema, I can tell her, why do you care? Then it was an agricultural economy. So by having a property, you're wealthy because you're going to have a lot of produce. So he could tell her, why do you care where the property is? Are you going to go harvest and then schlep everything home? No, I'm going to do it. So what do you care where my property is? I'm still going to produce the same amount of wealth.
You want some homes, you don't want to travel every day for hours.
I'm Allah, he can tell him, my nafkalachmina. I'm not terach the Messina. I'm going to bring them on anyway. The Gemara Kamash Malon. Maybe that's the Kamash Malon. Like Chaim says, Kamash Malon. Maybe she does want him here. Okay. Almanasha Erech Beitz Garaf. Tana Lo Niskav Nazu El Lirish Mishalot. Of course, she meant, show me what you got. Doesn't mean show me in a postcard a lot of land. V'mher bebika einu mekudesh. Pek mapshita, zok to Gemara, the noket bidistura. He's an aris. So it's similar to in the case of the Mishnah, the last Mishnah, where he had it as a venture capitalist, he had it as money that someone invested with him. So to here, if he's an aris, so you see this person trusted him with his karka. He's doing big investments. Kamash Malon, she wants to know that he has the assets himself. Zok to Gemara. We learned an interesting halacha about hektish. Hamaktish sodeyu b'shas hayovel. And b'shas hayovel doesn't mean it's the yovel year. It means in a period of time where yovel was noyek. So the halacha is when you're maktish shtei achuza, you don't assess the value of a property based on its quality, its soil, its location. No, there's a prescriptive amount that the Torah says you redeem a field with. And what is the prescriptive amount? A piece of property that you could grow, you pay for that 50 shekel kesef. Now, Rashi and Tosfos both tell us that this prescriptive formula only applies when Yovel was happening. But once Yovel wasn't happening anymore, then if you were makdash a field, you just paid its assessed value. Now, what happens if there are hayu nekoyim amukim asar tvach? They were boiros, big holes, ditches in this property that was 10 tvachim deep. Or rocks that were 10 tvachim high. The halach is ein nimdadin ima. Those wouldn't be counted as part of the field. But pachas mikam, but if they were not 10 tvachim deep, or they were not 10 tvachim high, nimdadin ima, that would be measured with. And we asked the kasha on this price. Okay, let's say they're not part of this piece of property because they're 10 tvachim removed. Masking. But nit kiddushu ba'pei nafshayu. So they should be independent properties that you were also makdish. That should require the same pidyon. As Rashi says on the third line, so what I just said, Rashi doesn't say. Rashi says, what's the advantage? Why would it be any better if it was part of the property? If you're going to count the surface of that area anyway, what's the difference if it's counted as part of the property or separate from the property? Zok Rashi, Liyos Katafris Shalahen Nimdod Lalas B'Chashv. The walls, the slope. Do you count the slope as part of the flat property, as part of the land where you could plant on?
You can't plant on a rock.
That's a very, very good question. But let's focus now on the ditch. Let's focus on the ditch. It's just a slope. Why can't you plant there? The Gemara is going to bring a raya from exactly your kashas. But I'll call upon him. So
Does the rock mind that's a steep rock, mamish?
that's what the Gemara is assuming. The Gemara is assuming that it's steep. As in
Isn't there-
Muslims,
Isn't there a pasuk that says one of the milas of Eretz Yisrael is that it has hills and valleys and that you can
yeah,
plant on those?
a gradual rise and drop, the Gemara is going to say, is normal. But we're talking about a sharp drop in a very short period of time,
Cliffs, basically.
like a cliff. That's right. So Zokt Rashi, Nehi de Bahadi Ara, like Kitchu. And therefore, you don't count the slope as areas, but Nikdishu Bapan of Shayu, Rashi is Liyos Dim Dodin, Lefi Mashiyesh Plahat. At least the flat land at the top and the flat land at the bottom should be land that you can also pay this formula of 50 shekel kesef for a zera chomer sayrim.
But then what's the reason that if Taka is because it's called it's a different field. So when he said to die,
No, he meant everything. That's clear.
so if I was Taka is nicht
So we're going to see. Have a base core like Choshev. If you're going to tell me that since that area is not a base core, therefore we don't count it, or a mini, I'm going to show you that you count any piece of property. Soda. It says in the pasuk Soda, which is im mistei achuzosai. It says im mistei achuzosai yaktish ish lashem. Okay. It says vayekachal v'zaray zera chaymer sorim b'chamishim shekel kesef. Ainly el shehikdish ben yinazeh. I would only think that if you were makdish at least a zera chaymer sorim, then it has kedusha that you are pointed in this fashion. But what if it was less? Minayin l'rabbish lesach is less than that, right? Or chatzi lesach, or so, or tarkav, or chatzi tarkav, ba'afiru roiva, a small amount, right? Minayin, time of mistake, mikol mokar. No matter what field it is, it has the regular kedusha, and therefore you would be pointed. So the kash is nikdishu ba'apan of shayu. So what did he answer? It wasn't a ditch. It was full of water. And since it's full of water, you can't plant it at all. So the Torah says, Zera, you have to be able to plant this amount of soyrim, and then you pay 50 shekel kesef for it. This you can't plant anything. That's why it doesn't count. Dekanami. I'll prove it to you. And now the Gemara asks Shmatis Kasha. The Ketani dum you the sloim gavoyim. Shemami no. Sloim gavoyim, can you plant on rocks? You can't plant on rocks. So therefore we have to verteidigen that the ditch is a similar feature to the rock, that they're not plantable, and that's why they're enoi minamin. Frek the Gemara, if this is non-plantable land, either because there's water in it or because it's a rock, then afilu pachas mekenami. What's the difference if it's 10 tefachim or not? The fact of the matter is, it's non-plantable land, so it shouldn't be counted as part of the formula. So Gemara, Hani Nagni the Aramikru, or Shidru the Aramikru. The Nakoyim, the ditches are considered the wrinkles of the land, and the rocks are considered the veins popping out of the land. Everyone has veins popping out of their head. So in other words, it's the natural formation of land. If it's natural formation of land, that's normal, it's part of the land, then you'll count it, even though you can't plant in that actual space. It's like common area in the commercial space. When you pay for rent on the square footage, you're also paying for your portion of the common area. So it's a common area, it's included in your rent. However, However, if it was deeper than that, then it's considered a separate property, and it's not property that you could assess using the Paris formula because it's property that you cannot plant it. So that's the halacha when you're makdish a field. If it's not molei mayim and it's plantable, then merechel l'shara. But if it's not plantable, then merechel l'shnishara. Unless it's a very low ditch that's less than 10 tefachim, then you say it's part of the land. Now, gabi mecher, what happens in the same case if you sell property? So gabi mecher k'tan. Base skur offer ani moichalach. What if someone tells his friend, give me $10,000, I'm selling you a base skur offer. And then when they examine the land, when they send in the property, what's it called, the property inspector, the surveyor, they find out that means that you cannot count that towards the base core offer that he's selling. But pachas mikan, if they're not so deep, nimdadanima, and there even though they're not full of water, my time. Why? Amar Papa ein adam roitze sheetness ma'osav besada achas v'yir loy kishnayim u'shloisha makayim. The das adam is I want flat land. I'm not looking for different levels, different lands. I'm not looking for a combined parcel of different lands. I want one piece. So you can see that when it comes to kinyonim, the person that has hakpada, I want one piece of land, whether it's plantable or not. Lagabe hakdish is only not counted if it's not plantable. But lagabe mecher, I expect it all to be one property, even if it's plantable. So what if a man told a wife, I'm enough that I have a base for offer? What does she want? What if there were ditches in the property, but there was no water in it? Do we compare it to mecher and therefore it's not a good Kiddushin because there's a hakpada? Or do we compare it to hakdish and it is a good Kiddushin? Hakamai, the hakdish medinin midamin law, and therefore it would be a good Kiddushin. Or it would not be a good Kiddushin. So tomorrow mistaver la hakdish midamin law, it'll be a good Kiddushin. The amala not tarachna v'zarana u'maisina. Again, what do you care if there's different levels? It means I'm going to have to jump into that ditch and I'm going to have to harvest from there. That's not a problem. The mail, if the property is somewhere else in a different city, there you're going to move too far away. I don't want that to happen. But here it's going to be the same city, so you're going to work a little harder to plant and to harvest the ditch. That you can live. Gewaltig. It's a complicated subject to bring out a simple point. Now it gets a little bit more. Now we're getting into heavy duty lumdas. Rab Meir Omer, we've been discussing a t'nai. Almanas that you have Messiah Zuz, almanas this. What is the proper syntax to make a t'nai that's going to stick? Zokt the Heilige Gemara, Zokt Rab Meir, if it wasn't like Bnei Gad and Bnei Ruvain, it's not a good t'nai. Now Rashi tells us there's three features of the t'nai of Bnei Gad and Bnei Ruvain. The most obvious feature that we know about is t'nai kofel. What happened by Bnei Gad and Bnei Ruvain? Moshe Rabbeinu told them as follows. Let me see if I can find the pasuk. It says in the pasuk, "Vayomer Moshe Aleim, Im Yavru Bnei Gad Bnei Ruvain itchem." If Bnei Gad and Bnei Ruvain come with you to Eretz Yisrael proper, as a yarden called Cholut L'Malchama, and they go fight the war with you, L'fnei Hashem, and v'nich b'shar L'fneichem, and then they capture the land. Then unisatem lahem et Eretz Hagilad Lachut. But it doesn't stop there. It's a kafel. You have to speak out the other half too. Then they're just going to be like every other yid, and they're going to get part of Eretz Canaan. They're not going to be entitled to Ever Hayard. So there's three things we learn from here. It has to be a t'nai kafel. So you can't say Haret B'Kedashishli Almanas that I have a base core of property. You also have to say, and if I don't have a base core offer, you're not B'Kedashis. You have to speak out the other half. The other half. Sorry?
Didn't say Almanas.
The other thing is, the other feature we learn from here is, it says here first the yes. If you go, you'll get. If you don't go, you don't get. He didn't say if you don't go, you won't get. And if you go, you will get. So it has to be hein koidim lalav. So harayas mekudashishli, if I have land, if I don't have land, you're not Mekudeshes. If I said the opposite way, if I don't have land, I'm not Mekudeshes, and if I do have land, I am Mekudeshes, that wouldn't work either. So the syntax has to be Kain Kodim Alav. And the third feature that we see here is it's Tanai Kodim Lamais. Moshe didn't say you get the land if you go. He said if you go, you get the land. Which means you can't say Harayat Mekudeshes if I have land. You have to say if I have land, Harayat Mekudeshes. So those are the three rules of Tanoim that we learned from Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven. We're going to see in a moment that Reb Chanina ben Gamliel says you don't see Tanai Kafel. Why don't you take Tanai Kafel? You see over here by Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven, they made a Tanai Kafel. They said Vim lo yavru chalutza mitchem then v'nechsu b'soichem beretz Canaan. So Reb Chanina, that's not extra. If it's some extra, and the question really is, do you say Mechalal Lav Ata Shemei Hein? If you say Mechalal Lav Ata Shemei Hein, so then why do I need Vim lo yavru? I already knew that if you go, you get Eivah Yarden, so I could figure it out the opposite. If you don't go, you don't get Eivah Yarden. So Reb Chanina, no. Here you say Avada Mechalal Ata Shemei Hein, and I don't need the Tanai Kafel. So why did Moshe Rabbeinu have to be careful to Tanai? Because let me ask you a question. He told them, if you come with us in the Eretz Yisrael and you fight, you'll get Eivah Yarden, right? What if you don't come with us and fight? You can't even call it. Maybe if you don't come with us and fight, I'm not giving you anything because you're not coming to fight. We don't know what the other side of the coin is. So Moshe Rabbeinu had to clarify the other side of the coin. The other side of the coin is you'll be like everybody else. You might have thought if Moshe Rabbeinu didn't explain the other side, you could have thought you better come with us and then you'll get your Eivah Yarden. But don't, you get nothing at all. But therefore, Rabbi Chanina, it have to say this anyway, so you don't have a raya that you need a Tanai Kafel. There's a big machlokes in the Rishonim. Once Rabbi Chanina did away with Tanai Kafel, did he also do away with the Tanai Kodim L'Maitz and the Hein Kodim L'Lav? So there's a shaila. Tosfos discusses whether or not Rabbi Chanina did away with all of them or only the one of Tanai Kafel, and there's rayas from Shas.
Said Lefnecha means they have to go in front. If they don't go in front,
so that's also a good point. Tosfos actually says that the Tanai was more. It's not enough that you should go fight with your brothers. You have to go ahead. You have to lead them. That's what was Moshe was money. So that's how Tosfos on the base. We didn't get there.
Aber stammen Leute zu sagen, as they won't get anything. Why?
Because maybe they're not doing. They did Tanavla. They did Tanavla. They want to go to the show. So Zok the Gemara. Rabbi Meir Omer. Told Nai Shenik Knai when they go to the Reuben ain't it not? Shenemar Vayom Arleim and Miyavru when they go to the Reuben and then Eksiv Vim Lo Yavru Chalutzim. So you see Moshe Rabbeinu said, I have to speak out the other side because Mechalav I Ata Shemei Hein. What do you mean? You really Mechlalav Ata Shemei Hein. So why did Moshe Rabbeinu have to speak out to Vim Lo Yavru? Sarach Hadav L'Arbrei. Shel Malay came if he wouldn't have spoken out. What would be if they don't go fight? Yesh b'mashma. You could have thought Shafilu Beretz Canaan they won't get anything at all. So therefore, you have to speak out to Vimloi, not because you have arrived from here that you need a tackle. Zok the Heilige Gemara Vayt. Shapir Ka'amalei Reb Chanina ben Gamliel Reb Meir. I mean, I think Reb Chanina is a very good taina. So what's the right for me to need a tackle? It's a very good argument. Moshe Rabbeinu had to explain what the other side was. Otherwise, you could have mistakenly think that they're not going to get anything. Zok the Gemara Amalach Reb Meir. That's not true. Because he saw Kedaita, Lav not Kavlu Dasa. If you're going to say that the Imlo Yavru is completely necessary, and there's nothing extra about it to teach us Tanai Kafel, well then Lichtay Vimlo Yavru v'Neichasu b'Seikah. And I would have known that you still get part of the land, you get your regular share. Why did Moshe have to stick in Be'eretz Canaan? The word Be'eretz Canaan is extra. Be'eretz Canaan Lomal. So Zok to Gemara, that is extra to teach you that you need a Tanai Kafel. Shema Mina l'Tanai Kafel. And Rashi explains it more. It's not just an extra word. So Rashi explains it with a calculation. Lama lizak Rashi be'eretz Canaan. The mashma be'eretz Canaan is mashma miuta lemuti shelo yuchlu be'eretz Gilad keneged chelkam shebe'eretz Canaan. It's mashma that they're definitely going to get an Eretz Canaan. You have to understand they already captured Eivah Yarden. They belong to Klal Yisrael. So you might have thought that they'll get a fair share. They won't get a bigger share to have Eretz the Eivah Yarden all to themselves, but they'll get the same share that they would have been entitled to as a member of Klal Yisrael, and they might get it. They might get it in Eivah Yarden. No, it's to tell you that all of your property that you're going to get is going to be exclusively to Eretz Canaan. So Shemami no putzrich lichfoil v'loymar. Therefore, he had to have said the kfelus v'loymar im lo yavru lo yehei b'dvarai klum. If you don't go, then you're not going to get Eivar Yarden. V'loy kaflu, and if you didn't make the kfelus, hoisa matanosoi kayemes the mechlal hein lo nishmalav. If it wasn't for the kfelus, we would have thought that he still gets Eivar Yarden. Kamash Malon, you have to speak out that you don't get Eivar Yarden. Zog to Gemara. So now the Tanakama or Meir came back with a good response that Eretz Canaan is to tell you that you need to make a Tanakafel. Otherwise, I wouldn't know that the no means you don't get anything in Eretz Hagilat. So tomorrow Chanina ben Gamliel says no. Let's say just have a noichasu b'soichachem. If you don't go for noichasu b'soichem, but I wouldn't have said Beretz Canaan, I would have been missing a critical piece of information. Havamina the noichasu b'soichachem be'eretz Gilad. I would have thought that the noichasu b'soichem means you'll get your fair share. Where will you get it in Eivar Yarden? I mean, you won't even be zoichet to get a part of Eretz Yisrael at all if you don't go fight with them. You'll get your fair share, but that fair share won't even be in Eretz Yisrael. It'll be Eivar Yarden. No, they wanted the whole Eivar Yarden, so they should have more space. You're going to get the same space as everybody else, but it will be in Eivar Yarden. Aval Eretz Canaan, Klalo, you'll get nothing in Eivar Yarden. So once again, that's why you need the Eretz Canaan to say, no, you're even going to get your fair share in Eretz Canaan. And therefore, it needed to say Eretz Canaan, and you don't see a Knai Kovel from here. On this point, Toshus asks the question. You're telling me, Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel, that there's a Havamin. I'm sorry, that Lamaskona, even if they don't go into Eretz Yisrael at all, they're still going to get a fair share of Eretz Yisrael? Why do they deserve to get anything of Eretz Yisrael if they remain back and they don't fight? That's why Toshus learned what Chaim said before, is that it's other right you're going to go and fight. But if you have to lead them, you have to be the heroes of battle in order for you to be able to have Eivar Yarden. If you just fight like everybody else, then you're going to get a chelik like anybody else. But if you don't fight at all, then you get nothing.
Wasn't it their own?
Sorry?
Didn't they themselves say that we're going to be chalutzim? I think, do you learn it from chalutz, that word, that they're going to be?
Yes,
that they're going to be.
That's what it says. The passion the klahak yimyavu chalutzim means
Yeah, so it's the word chalutzim. It strikes me that they volunteered that
is they're leading the war.
Didn't they volunteer that themselves, that they would be chalutzim?
Yeah, and Moshe built that into the Tanai.
Okay.
Therefore, Tosh says there's no havamina that if they wouldn't have fought at all, even side by side with their brothers, that they would have got Eretz Yisrael. They only got Eretz Yisrael because they fought side by side. Okay, so Zogt Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel. So now Reb Meir has to come back. Why is Eretz Canaan extra? Reb Meir b'soichechem means in and of itself Eretz Yisrael, because b'soichem means kol heicha de islachu mashu. And noisu b'soichem means wherever they have, you'll have. So we would have known that they would have a chelik in Eretz Yisrael without the Eretz Canaan, and therefore Eretz Canaan is extra, and that's how you know it's not b'nei God. The Reuben has to be a Tanai Kof.
Problem is that all
I gotta go back to 6:40. We'll talk later. Tanya, Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel. Mashal Rabbi David. Rabbi Chanina wanted to give a mashal to illustrate his side. In fact, that you needed to speak out the vim lo yavru v'noychsub sechem beretz Canaan, because otherwise I wouldn't know it, even though you say mechlalav t'shmei. L'adam shei mechalak nechasav l'ban. Somebody who was divvying up his nechasim to his children. Amari said, "Ploini b'ni." Ruvain will yashin sada ploinis, sada A, uploini b'ni yira sada ploinis, and Shimon will yashin sada B, uploini b'ni, and the Levi, I want to give him a much bigger and better property that's worth so much more than the property that I gave to Reuven and Shimon. And therefore, he had to put money into the pot. Yitein Masayim Zuz. If he puts 200 Zuz into the pot to split up, then I will gift him the Yirei Sada Ploinis. Then he'll get this big, massive festive field called Area C. And But if he doesn't give the $200, the father spoke out. Yiresh im echav b'shar nechas. He's just going to get his fair share of everything else. Zokt Reb Chanina. Let's figure this out. Mi garim loy leirish im echav b'shar nechas. If he ends up not putting the $200, why does he just get a fair share with his brothers and all the nechasim? It's kfei garim. It is the fact that the father spoke that out. Zokt Rashi. Mi garim loy lita lim echav b'shar nechasim kfei garim loy dem loy kafal. Had the father not spoken out that if you don't give the money, you're going to get an equal share with everybody else, I would have thought otherwise. If he wasn't going to put in the $200, he doesn't split up an even share of all three fields, his fair share of A, his fair share of B, and his fair share of C, like the father spoke out should happen if he doesn't pay. Rather, you know what we would have done? We would have told him, he still gets exclusively in C. A and B still goes to Reuben and Shimon. C he'll get, but he won't get the whole C. He'll only get C, connected what the brothers got in A and B. But in A and B, he'll get nothing at all. And Koshagain, he won't get in that Sadak Shar Nechasim. Rather, what's going to happen is, all that's going to happen is Sada C will be split three ways evenly. So I would thought he gets nothing at all. I would have, if the father didn't speak out, that if you don't put in the $200, you're going to share in everything equal. I would have thought that if you don't put in the $200, then Sada C will get split three ways.
Means it's going to get less than that.
It'll get less than that. It's correct. At least the reason why Moshe had to speak out, if you don't go, you're going to get your fair share, is because Shem Loi Kafel had Moshe Rabbeinu not say what's going to happen if they don't go to fight, then Hayisi Omer Lo Yitlu Klum. They shouldn't get anything in Eretz Canaan, Ela Eretz Gilad Masha Magiyam. Whatever fair share they're supposed to get in Eretz Yisrael, they're going to get it there, or they'll split Eretz Gilad into multiple parts, and they'll only get 1/12 of Eretz Gilad.
It's not a logical
So let me finish the Shaklev tire first, and then we'll drill down. So Zok to Gemara, Zok to Reb Chanina ben Gamliel. It's obvious to me, Zok Reb Chanina ben Gamliel, based on this mashal, that it was important for Moshe to speak out the Vimloi, and in fact, it's not extra. Zok to Gemara, so let's go further up. So Zok to Gemara, Mi Garim Loy Leish Imecha B'Shar Nechasim. Why does he at least get a fair share and not lose everything? Kfeile Garim Loy, it's only because his father spoke it up. Fact to Gemara, how could Reb Chanina use such a mashal? V'loidomia mashal l'masnisin. The mashal that Reb Chanina is offering is not similar to the case of Bnei Gad Bnei Reuben. Why? Hajim Katani Yesh b'mashma shafilu be'eretz Canaan lo yield. In the Mishnah, Reb Chanina said from the Tanai where he said if you go in with them you'll get. It's a mashma that if you don't go you won't even get in Eretz Yisrael anything at all. The part that says shafilu be'eretz Canaan lo yield, you see that the discussion is side the chelek in Eretz Yisrael and side the chelek in Evar Yarden. It says afilu be'eretz Canaan lo yield. So you see that the discussion here is maybe they will get nothing at all. But for Harka Katani, in your mashal, we knew for sure he was going to get his fair share of area C. The whole question is A or B. For Harka Katani, mi garim le'lerish im achav b'shar nechasim. Kfeile garim le. Alma kfeile l'shar nechasim huda nekamahani. You see, the kfeilos helps only to get his fair share in A and B. But in C, we knew he was going to get his fair share. He didn't have to speak that out. So the question is, Reb Chanina's mashal is not parallel to the case that the Mishnah is talking about. Zok to Gemara lo kash. Ha makama the name of Reb Meir v'noichzu. Ha lebazed the name of Reb Meir v'noichzu. Before we learned the Brisa, when we just learned the Mishnah, there, in fact, Reb Chanina's thought was that if they wouldn't have spoken out the other half of the equation, if you don't go fight, you get. Then at that point, he thought that, yeah, they would get nothing at all. And that's the Lashon of Mishnah is Shafilu Be'eretz Canaan Lo, they'll get nothing at all. But after Rab Meir responded to him and said that Eretz Canaan is extra, so right at the Shakla at the beginning, so now already he realized that from V'noichsu alone, I would have known that they get an Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, his mashal is a mashal is an accurate mashal to this scenario after he already had his Shakla B'taya with Reb Meir, and he agreed that V'noichsu tells you that they would have had a chelik. V'noichsu would have said they had a chelik in the rest of the land. Eretz Canaan is only telling you that he has a chelik in Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, once he had the Shakla B'taya with Reb Meir, he already knew that from V'noichsu they would have for sure had a chelik in Chutz La'aretz. The discussion was only if they would have in Eretz Canaan, and at the end of the day, that was the Kudus HaMachloikis between Reb Chanina and Reb Meir was only off if the Eretz Canaan is extra. But for the V'noichsu, it's for sure that they would have had a chelik in the Eretz Hagilot and every layer. So now that we have this Machloikis, the Gemara is going to go through Shas and find cases that either prove that you do need a Tanai Kofel or that you don't need a Tanai Kofel. So let me quickly run through two cases. Bishlam Reb Meir, Hanu Dechsev Ostinok Me'alos. Avram Avinu was Mashpia. Sorry? Bishlam Reb Meir, Hanu Dechsev, our Pash, the Lina hits again. Hanu Dechsev and Tatum says, he told Cain, improve, you'll be okay. And there was a Tanai Kofel there. V'mloi Tatum, L'Pesach Hatas Reibetz. Reb Chanina Lomali. And Tativ says, if not, you won't have says. Dr. Mar, no. So if you approve, you'll get schar. And Loy said, if you don't approve, you won't get schar, but you won't get punishment. Kamash Malonim, Loy Tativ, the Pesach at the Roivet, the Pesach at the Roivet, you're going to get a punishment as well. And that is when Avram released Eliezer. If you can't find someone for my daughter, for my son, amongst my family, then you're naki from the promise that I forced you to make to me. If you go to my sisters, if you find, then take. And I would know. If you don't find, then don't take. What if the Kala wants to come, but her family won't let her come? Which in fact is what happened, right? Rivka wanted to come, but her family don't want to let her come. I would have thought, Maisi Balkar Chayu. I meant that no, you're still obliged by the shvuah and take her against their will because you're still covered by the shvuah. Kamash Malon, that's not. If they won't give her to you, you don't have to bring it. It says in Loisaiva Isha. Lovely. So by Loisaiva Isha it says, Loisaiva Isha lechaz acharecha v'nikisa mishvuah sizais. Rak espenila shashem sham. So Loisaiva Isha lamali. Why do you need im loy soiva isha? And I think this is a kasha, according to everybody. Im loy soiva isha lamali. So the more ishach. So kadat chamina heicha denicha lo lidihu v'nicha lo didoch. What if they're happy to send her, but she doesn't want to come? Maybe not. Maybe nice about her. Kamash malon. That you need to get. You're only covered by my shvuah. If both she wants and the family wants, if either one of them protests, then you're going to be nokim elos. And then it says where it talks about the toich. Why do I need the I could know it because you're not going b'chukosa. So so Rashi brings, the Torah brings down from Yeshaya. If you listen to Hashem's mitzvahs, then you're going to benefit from the beautiful land of Etzrol. But you know what you're going to eat? You're going to be eaten by swords. So why did I need the Vintamana? Vintamana Marisa. Im toivu ushmatem, then you'll have good, you'll have brach. But you're going to get klala. The same thing. So Gemara, my cheref to what am I saying? What was the klala of cheref to? It's a mashma that the food that you eat will be like a sword. What does that mean? Amarava, you know what it means? It means you're going to eat milcha galanisa, thick salt, nahama desaria kusha, hard barley bread with saline and onions. Damar pas purni kareva, dried out barley bread, the melech with salt, with saline and onions. Hashim laguf karavos. That's so bad for you. It's like swallowing a sword. Okay, we'll stop here.
3 questions. According to alle Lashonas do, in the Mishnah is Harayat Mekadeshis